The 26th of October, and it's a busy day on both sides of the Atlantic so far as earnings are concerned. But let's start on the economic calendar because we've got a couple of really big events that could well stir some activity around the euro-dollar trade. But we begin in the UK with the CBI Distributive Trade Survey for the month of October. In Europe, we get the ECB interest rate decision. Now, it's not expected we'll see any of the main rates moved, but it'll be interesting to see just what commentary there is around the inflationary side of what's happening, because the European Central Bank, like all central banks, targets inflation, and inflation is still well above the target rate. So in theory, they should be looking possibly at still raising interest rates. Whether they'll do it tomorrow remains to be seen, but it's not expected in the market. But certainly one of the big trades out of this is going to be what's happening with the euro dollar. But for that side of the equation of well for the dollar, we've got to look at what's happening in the US. So we get a third quarter growth rate. Now, this is the first look at the third quarter numbers, so it'll be a really important number. ECB interest rate decision comes 15 minutes before that, so it could well be a really interesting 15, 30 minutes or so of trade around for the euro dollar. Let's take a look at what's happening for euro dollar, because the rest of the economic calendar pales to an insignificance, really. We've got this rising line of support from the lows that we had when the euro was down at this line of support at 104.48. Since then, we've seen these higher lows and higher highs, which gives some sort of hope, perhaps possibly maybe, for this rising line of support to be held. Now, if you're long on this going into tomorrow, which would mean the euro rising against the US dollar, so potentially some good news coming out, or some positive news for the euro out of the interest rate decision tomorrow, and possibly something less good for growth in the States, we could well see an upside for this, in which case you'd have your stop underneath the underside of this rising line of support. But it's not that plain simple. Because there is a lot of factors to consider about this. And one of the things is to whether or not the European Central Bank does see any further interest rate rises to come. Ahead of this, we've seen a lot of economic data out in Germany suggesting that the environment is really quite poor in terms of the economy. And Germany is Europe's largest economy, which is the real motor behind some of what's been happening. And we're seeing a lot of dire data coming through from Germany. Interesting to see what the Eurozone has to say tomorrow through the European Central Bank, and the outlook for growth, inflation, and the general health of the economy. That all comes tomorrow with the ECB interest rate decision. We're watching euro dollar around that and the third quarter growth figures out in the States. Let's take a look at what's happening in terms of some of the corporate news headlines. Here in the UK, Standard Chartered, Unilever and WPP. I think Unilever could be the most interesting one. It is only a trading statement, but it is nonetheless an updated position on what's happening. This is the Unilever stock trading in London. Now, I've drawn this line here of 39.34. We have been lower than that recently, but there's been a rebound above that. So I think this line of support, generally speaking, is likely to hold. If we draw another line underneath there to give you sort of a band of support that could be seen, 38.86 to 39.34. We're currently trading at 39.83 here in London, ahead of the news headlines tomorrow. It's got a broad range of well-known household brands, and in some respects, it does have a certain defensive quality about it. Unilever's performance since the lows we had back in March last year has really not been too bad, and it's held up quite well above that rising line of support. The thing is to see here is what happens with this head and shoulders pattern here. You've got a break of the neckline, which is around about the 38 level. If you get a break of that, you're then potentially on the way down to this line of support down here at 34.50. So Unilever potentially, technically, has some downside to come when it breaks the neckline, but at the moment at least it's being held up. Interesting to see what comes through in terms of earnings tomorrow. Let's take a look at what's happening in Europe, because we've got a lot of companies reporting there. One of them I want to follow up on is Volkswagen, although we have BNP Paribas, Total Energies as well in amongst the list of A-listed companies reporting numbers. But Volkswagen's going to be interesting. And indeed, we saw Porsche, in which Volkswagen has a lot of interest. Volkswagen's on the way down, like Porsche. Porsche today on the way down after what appear to be good numbers, but the outlook not particularly good. Volkswagen, currently trading at 111.52. It's got this line of support down here, which the lows we had back on the COVID lows at 95.80, and that could well be the price target if we get some poor news coming out of Volkswagen. One of the main things to watch out for tomorrow when Volkswagen reports numbers is just what it's doing and how it's beginning to move further and further into the electric vehicle market. That'll be key, I think, for the earnings tomorrow. In terms of the US, the list is long. I mean, these are just the major companies reporting numbers. We get numbers out from Ford Motor. We get the numbers out from Caterpillar, Intel, Amazon, Manchester United as well, possibly. We're awaiting details of that, but of course that potentially also is the subject of a possible bid coming through from two potential parties. We're waiting to see just what MNU has to say about that, but the stock expected to report tomorrow. Let's take a quick look at what's happening with Ford. Ford Motor, like a lot of automakers, finding they're going tough. It's clear that people just don't have money to spend on new vehicles at the moment like they used to have. The stock is currently trading at 11.37. The company reports after the bell tomorrow evening, so that'll be coming through, and it'll be an opportunity to trade this because it is an all-session stock on the IG platform, as indeed is too Intel, another one of these companies which has an opportunity to offer IG clients the chance to trade this after the bell when it produces its numbers for the third quarter. And Amazon, probably the biggest company reporting tomorrow, another stock that trades all sessions, and another opportunity to trade this when it reports those numbers for the third quarter after the bell on Thursday. And that's it for our quick look around some of the stocks and events to watch out for on Thursday, the 26th of October.